In 1948, American rail executives unveiled a machine so powerful it could outpull any locomotive ever seen. But within just 2 years, their prize was abandoned, scrapped, and nearly erased from history. They called it the Chesapeake and Ohio M1, a coal-hungry steam turbine that was supposed to secure the future of steam and the railroad's coal fortunes forever. Instead, it became a cautionary tale of ambition gone wrong. To understand why America's mightiest locomotive was cast aside almost as soon as it appeared, we have to start with a secret boardroom gamble and a post-war race for survival. Coal flowed from the Appalachian Hills by the trainload, feeding the Chesapeake and Ohio Railway's bottom line. In the boardrooms of C&O, coal was not just another commodity. It was the backbone of the company's revenue, the reason for its sprawling network, and the lifeblood of entire communities along its tracks. By the late 1940s, company annual reports described coal as the foundation of C&O's freight business, with the majority of gross income tied directly to moving black diamonds eastward. But the landscape was shifting. Across the country, railroads were placing orders for new diesel locomotives, fueled by oil and promising lower maintenance costs. For C&O, this trend posed a threat not just to tradition, but to the very economics of the railroad. If the industry abandoned coal-fired steam, C&O risked losing both its market for coal and its competitive edge as a carrier. Inside the company's energy planning groups, anxiety simmered over more than just competition. Engineers and policy advisors warned that America's oil reserves, already strained by World War II and rapid industrial growth, might run dry within a generation. Internal forecasts painted a stark picture. Oil could become scarce in as little as 25 to 30 years, forcing the industry to return to coal or face a crisis. This fear shaped every major investment decision. Industry journals and energy bulletins echoed these concerns, predicting that the post-war boom would push oil demand to unsustainable levels. For planners at C&O, the message was clear. Hedging bets on diesel alone looked risky. The answer, they believed, lay in doubling down on coal, but with a technological leap that could match or surpass diesel's promise. This conviction drove the search for a locomotive that could keep coal relevant in the diesel age. Executives and engineers imagined a future where coal-fired trains ran farther, faster, and cleaner than ever before. They saw opportunity in abundance, coal fields under long-term contract, a workforce skilled in steam, and a market eager for innovation. Cleaner operation mattered as much as raw power. The result was a mandate from the highest levels of the company. Develop a new kind of locomotive, one that would secure coal's place at the heart of the American railroad for decades to come. The stage was set for a bold experiment, rooted as much in resource economics as in engineering ambition. The marketing office at Chesapeake and Ohio Railway buzzed with anticipation as the plans for the M1 took shape. This was not just another locomotive. It was the centerpiece for a new era of American passenger travel. The company's vision rested on the Chessie, a streamliner designed to offer unmatched speed and comfort between Washington, D.C. and Cincinnati. The M1 would be the engine at the head of this steel ribbon, promising a cruise speed of 70 miles per hour and the ability to surge up to 100 miles per hour when the timetable demanded. Chesapeake and Ohio executives pored over promotional brochures and draft schedules, picturing a train that would glide through the night, powered by coal, but as modern as tomorrow. The Chessie's branding was everywhere. Glossy advertisements showed sleek cars and a futuristic locomotive, promising a journey as smooth as silk and as fast as a jet. The M1 was not just a machine, it was the public face of the company's wager on coal and technology. Behind the scenes, the capital commitment was staggering. The 3 M1 locomotives cost $1.6 million to build, excluding the research and development needed to bring the turbine dream to life. For a railroad in the late 1940s, this was a bold statement, a bet that the future of railroading could be secured by outpacing the competition, not just matching it. Draft timetables called for overnight service, with the chassis slicing hours off the trip between major cities. Designers planned for every detail: air-conditioned cars, dome lounges, and a ride so quiet and swift that passengers could sleep through the journey. The M1's technical blueprint promised 1,000 miles between servicing stops, an audacious claim meant to reassure both travelers and investors that this was no ordinary train. Chesapeake and Ohio's marketing team leaned into the narrative of progress. They described the M1 as a marvel of American engineering, an engine that would keep the railroad's coal contracts strong while dazzling the public with speed and reliability. Newspaper articles and trade journals echoed this optimism, calling the M1 the most advanced locomotive in the world. At every level, the pressure was on. The company's future seemed to ride on the promise that this new machine could deliver not just power, but prestige and performance. The M1 was more than a locomotive. It was the embodiment of hope that coal could fuel a new golden age of American rail travel. Stretching over 154 feet from coupler to coupler, the Chesapeake and Ohio M1 was the longest single-unit locomotive in the world when it rolled out of Baldwin's shops in 1948. Its sheer size only hinted at the complexity packed inside. At the heart of the machine sat a Westinghouse steam turbine, rated at 6,000 horsepower, nearly double the output of the Chesapeake and Ohio's own Allegheny-class giants. But unlike those traditional brutes, the M1 did not rely on pistons or connecting rods. Instead, its power flowed through a chain of engineering rarely seen on American rails. Coal, loaded into a forward bunker, was mechanically stoked into a massive rear-mounted boiler. There, water was heated to a pressure of 310 pounds per square inch, producing superheated steam on demand. This steam spun the main turbine at high revolutions, a motion more familiar to power plant engineers than to railroaders. The turbine's shaft connected directly to a 6-to-1 reduction gearbox, bringing that furious speed down to a manageable range for the next stage. Rather than driving wheels mechanically, the turbine powered 4 direct current generators, each capable of producing 1,000 kilowatts, about 1,300 horsepower apiece. These generators supplied electricity to 8 traction motors, distributed across the locomotive's wheel sets. The result was a smooth, continuous surge of power, delivered electrically rather than through the hammering thrusts of pistons. In theory, this meant fewer moving parts, less vibration, and a steadier ride at high speed. The M1's layout was as unconventional as its powertrain. The coal bunker and water tank sat at the front, followed by the stoker, then the turbine generator assembly with the boiler and firebox all the way at the rear. This reversed the familiar silhouette of American steam, a decision driven not by style, but by the practical demands of weight distribution and maintenance access. The cab perched atop the middle of the locomotive, giving engineers a commanding view over the machinery and the track ahead. Every element was built on a grand scale. The locomotive tipped the scales at 857,000 pounds, with massive water and coal capacities to support long-distance runs. The throttle offered 11 distinct settings, each step unleashing more of the turbine's potential. On paper, the M1 could cruise at 70 miles per hour and top out at 100 miles per hour, all while hauling more tonnage than any diesel or steam engine then in service. Designers believed that this architecture would deliver a locomotive both powerful and efficient, able to run 1,000 miles between servicing stops. They saw the turbine generator chain as the key to unlocking the future of coal on American rails, a future built not on brute force alone, but on the promise, streamlined, electrically driven might. Shop crews at Clifton Forge gathered around the M1's control stand, eyes fixed on the throttle, a lever with 11 precise notches, each promising another surge of power from the turbine buried deep in the locomotive's frame. In theory, this new system was supposed to simplify their lives. No more valve gear to adjust, no more pounding pistons or leaking crossheads. But every hand on that throttle revealed a new kind of uncertainty. Unlike the familiar rhythm of a piston engine, the M1's turbine demanded a steady, high-speed run to reach its full potential. Shop bulletins warned that the locomotive's power curve was unforgiving. Throttle positions below 7 meant the turbine spun too slowly, burning coal at a rate that outpaced any traditional steamer, but without delivering the expected horsepower. Crews described the sensation as coaxing a stubborn giant, responsive only when allowed to stretch its legs at 70 miles per hour or more. On the Chessie's intended run, that might have been possible, but real-world conditions forced constant throttle changes, speed restrictions, and stops that left the turbine gasping in its least efficient range. Trial run reports from 1948 captured the tension. One engineer quoted in a shop memo confessed that he rarely dared to push the throttle past position 7. Local speed limits and track congestion kept the locomotive from ever reaching the sweet spot where the turbine could truly shine. The result was a machine that never felt at home, always straining, always on the edge of stalling or over-consuming fuel. The M1's design created a delicate interdependence between systems. The turbine, reduction gearbox, generators, and traction motors all relied on each other to function. A hiccup in any one component could bring the entire locomotive to a halt. Shop bulletins documented instances where a minor electrical short in one generator forced the crew to idle the whole train. There was no fallback, no way to limp home on partial power. For workers accustomed to the forgiving nature of conventional steam, this was a new and unwelcome reality. Maintenance staff soon realized that the promise of fewer moving parts did not translate into fewer headaches. The turbine's appetite for clean, dry steam clashed with the realities of coal dust, water leaks, and fluctuating boiler pressures. Each system depended on the others running perfectly. A single-point failure could cascade through the locomotive, leaving it dead on the main line. Reports from the shops began to read like lists of vulnerabilities: fouled traction motors, overheating reduction gears, coal dust infiltrating electrical cabinets. Every day in the shops, the line between operator and machine blurred. Crews became part-time detectives, searching for the source of a mysterious vibration or a sudden drop in generator output. The M1's power was real, but so were its limits. The more they learned, the more they understood that this locomotive demanded not just skill, but a kind of vigilance that no amount of training could guarantee. In the end, the M1's greatest strength, its bold, integrated design, became its most persistent weakness, exposing the fragile balance required to keep such a complex machine running on the rails. Coal bills for the M1 began to raise eyebrows almost immediately. Early logs from the Clifton Forge shops recorded coal consumption rates that dwarfed those of the largest conventional steam engines on the roster. Where a Class H8 Allegheny might burn through 10 to 12 tons of coal on a typical run, the M1 could devour nearly twice that amount, especially when forced to operate below its optimal speed. Each mile that ticked by at partial throttle meant more fuel wasted, an equation that grew more painful with every slow order and every stop signal along the line. Accountants in the C&O operations department compared route costs and found the numbers hard to justify. On the books, the M1's per-mile fuel expense outstripped not only the Alleghenies, but also the new EMD diesel electrics that were beginning to appear across the system. Diesel units, while less powerful on paper, required only a fraction of the fuel and could be run in multiple, tailoring horsepower to the job. Maintenance crews tracked labor hours and found that the M1 demanded more attention, not less, than the older steamers it was meant to replace. Every extra day spent in the shop added to the locomotive's already daunting cost profile. Market analysts within the company warned that these expenses would only climb as more diesels entered service. The price of coal, once a source of competitive advantage, now became a liability when paired with the M1's appetite. Regional managers, tasked with keeping trains moving and budgets in check, began to question whether the experiment could ever pay off. The numbers told a story that no amount of optimism could erase. The M1's power came at a price the railroad could not afford. The last winter of the M1's service brought a new kind of paperwork to Clifton Forge. Memos from operations management began to circulate, stamped with the words, "critical and non-repairable." Each time a generator failed or a traction motor burned out, the shop foreman added another requisition to the growing stack, only to find that replacement parts were back-ordered or discontinued entirely. Baldwin and Westinghouse, once eager partners, had already shifted their focus to diesel contracts. Turbine blades, reduction gears, and custom electrical components became nearly impossible to source, their manufacturers no longer maintaining stock or tooling for such a rare machine. By early 1950, the writing was on the wall. Internal correspondence from C&O's mechanical department outlined a formal withdrawal plan for all three M1 locomotives. The language was blunt. Units were to be removed from service upon the next major failure. Prepare for asset disposal. Shop supervisors received instructions to begin stripping usable fittings and to document the process for the company asset ledger. The decision was final, with no contingency for future repair and no attempt to sell or repurpose the engines. Scrap orders followed quickly, authorizing dismantling at C&O's own facilities. The process was methodical, with each locomotive reduced to salvageable steel and copper. No ceremony marked the end. The M1 simply disappeared from the roster, their numbers erased from the company's books. For the crews who had struggled to keep them running, the official withdrawal was a relief as much as a loss. The chapter closed not with a dramatic failure, but with a quiet administrative act that made the experiment's end absolute. Innovation races ahead, but progress listens to limits. Today, technology still promises revolutions, yet history proves that even the boldest breakthroughs can fail without practical foundation. As railroads, industries, and societies chase the next big leap, the lesson endures. Power without purpose is just noise on the tracks. What do you think? Can ambition ever outrun reality? Share your thoughts below.